welcome to another edition of Immediately Minds, the only anti-elitist show on the internet today. I am the Great Boudini.
And I'm Sir Lance Lott.
Lance, what's going on in the news world, my friend?
Pretty interesting stuff that's been happening. Not a whole lot since the last time we met. But let's kick things off with something that I'm really looking forward to. This is a band that I always know that I love. But I always am just kind of like in phases with them, you know what I mean? But ever since this was announced, I've been listening to the Scorpions a lot. Like, even on the way here, I was listening to Love at First Sting. And if you know that album, you know I'm talking about the Scorpions.
Yeah.
They're going on tour with Megadeth, which is another awesome name.
That is interesting. I'm thinking about... I don't know. I think it was Debbie. Debbie actually put it on Facebook. I was like, oh, man, Scorpions and Megadeth. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And then I was like, that's going to be the third time if I go, it's going to be the third time I've seen Megadeth. And, you know, I love Scorpions. My old man's a huge Scorpions fan.
It would be the third time seeing Megadeth for me, too, and my first time ever seeing the Scorpions. So, obviously, I'm going more because I want to see the Scorpions. But
and that's
Megadeth
one of your favorite
just
bands.
Like the icing on the... Well, I would say of the, like, classic heavy metal stuff, I'm talking, like, everything from the new wave of British. So, like, Iron Maiden and, you know... Judas Priest, Saxon, Scorpions were right up there with Maiden for me. Because Maiden is like my number one.
Right.
You know, of that whole like genre. But definitely the Scorpions were up there too.
Yeah, my dad, when I was growing up, my dad had a cassette, and I think it was called The Best of Ballads and something another. It was the Scorpions' greatest hits. It had this leather coat on it. I remember Holiday was on there, and Hey You, and all of which were definitely probably like, you know, sort of like late 70s, early 80s type of stuff. That was far beyond, that was way before the, you know, Rock You Like a Hurricane and stuff like that. But my favorite song would probably be the White Coma, or Coma White, I think it's called.
Oh, on Blackout?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was actually the entrance music from for the two Twin Towers, which was a wrestling tag team back in the 90s. It was Dan Spivey, and then it was originally Dan Spivey and then Undertaker, but then Undertaker went off and did his thing, and then Sid Vicious, but that was their their entrance music. It was pretty badass too.
What would you say is your favorite band to like that scene? And I said British wave heavy metal to give that like,
well
thing.
I mean if
but the thing is, like, Scorpions aren't British, they're like German and Swedish type of thing.
I'm still gonna say
but like
Def
that
Leppard.
area,
I'm always gonna say Def Leppard, because Def Leppard was the first ever music that I could ever remember. And Pyromania itself changed my life in the sense that, like, I've never listened to music before. I'm listening to Rock of Ages or Foolin', Photograph, stuff like that. And you're like age of 4. And you're like, wow, this stuff is fucking amazing. Like the guitar work, the production, the singing, the vocals, everything. Steve Clark, who actually just had his birthday yesterday. So, that was pretty cool. But yeah, Def Leppard. I mean, I know, and that's not really considered new wave of British heavy metal, even though they were kind of lumped in there, and Joe Elliott has said many times in the past that, you know, we're not that. You know, we're like the Who and the Kinks versus, you know, one particular genre, so to speak.
that's respectable though, and I can see why they'd be kind of lumped into that whole thing instead of like the new wave of metal music coming overseas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm excited for the tour, man. I'm gonna go for sure.
I'm definitely gonna try to make it.
It's just too good. I mean, like, I've seen Megadeth before and can vouch. I've seen the open for Maiden and like can vouch that they're. I mean, even though the new stuff like Super Collider and, you know, 13, I can pretty much live without. But when they do play the classic stuff, especially with like Marty Friedman,
oh yeah,
it's great.
Yeah.
So,
well, the lineup they just had with Chris Broderick and stuff, I really like that lineup. I've seen that lineup twice, and I think that lineup was just as tight as the Marty Friedman and Nick Menza lineup. You know, it's just as powerful.
Nick Menza's great too, though.
Yeah, he was.
But moving on, though, I actually read today, and I put this down because I thought it was interesting. Neil Young, who, I mean, if you are a Neil Young fan like me, you know that, like, he was on Spotify for a time and then just kind of disappeared from, like, that and iTunes and everything. And,
no, he's still on iTunes.
Well, now on iTunes and stuff, because I guess something clicked with him and he realized, you know, there's kind of no way to avoid streaming. So now he's coming up with this thing called Xstream, which, quote for quote, says as quality music as your internet can handle.
Okay.
That's enticing, but I'd want to like see reviews and see like what he did to make it sound that way. And if it's true, I might switch from using something like Spotify to that, because why wouldn't I want more high quality music?
Well, and that's the thing too. Like, you look at Tool, and it's been talked. We mentioned it, and it's been talked about for the past month and a half that Tool's actually considering, finally getting on iTunes and Spotify and Rhapsody and all those streaming things. And I think it's been, you as a band have to realize, the day of actual physical copies of albums are getting scarce. It's pretty much like a digital world. And people like Jack White is keeping the vinyl still alive because, that was actually announced last week that the Dead Weather is coming out with a live album. Of course, it's only going to be the Vault packages, so you're going to have to either become a member of the Third Man Records or just wait until it gets on eBay and you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg for it. But, he's keeping in that same length. But Tool's finally coming around saying, you know what, we're going to have to adapt, because we're only releasing albums and, a lot of people are ripping our shit off. We should maybe consider, going digital. And now, I mean, it's a great thing, but, and it's Def Leppard. Def Leppard's not on iTunes. They're another one of those bands that haven't moved over into the digital world as of yet.
Right.
But
I mean, hey, I can kind of see that, because as a physical medium lover like myself, when it comes to music, like I love collecting vinyl. So I think, and I'm not like an audiophile or anything, but it's just kind of a good feeling to like put an actual record on that's going to make you listen to it all the way through, get a full experience. And I mean, it really does sound better that way. Even on CD, I think there's enough space on like a CD for the MP3 file to get the sound completely fleshed out. So, I mean, just for me, paying for music that I like is worth it in the end. But that's why I use something like Spotify, because of course albums drop on the dot. When it's
sometimes not midnight, on the dot. Sometimes earlier.
Sometimes somebody will just randomly drop something on Spotify. Like I'm actually about to talk about one of those real soon. But when it comes to physical medium, I really think that that's the better option. I mean, you listen to an album when it drops on Spotify, or a single when it comes out on Spotify, whether it's okay, because you know how music used to come out on Tuesdays and then it switches to Friday, and now stuff comes out on Friday. If it's not on Friday, just a random time, because people like doing that now. I mean, we talked about that, I think, the last episode, too.
Yeah. Well, because the Pink Floyd box sets, they were released on a Friday. They weren't released on a Tuesday. But the Soundgarden Bad Motorfinger was released on a Tuesday. So.
Yeah. So I think it's just kind of like a transition sort of thing. Like some things are still coming out on Tuesdays, but everything's kind of shifted gears.
Yeah.
I think listening to stuff digitally is great because, of course, like somebody like us, we're Americans, we're always on the go. That really helps because, of course, you're going to want to listen to music like if you're at work or, if you're even going on a jog somewhere. Of course, you're going to want to have that with you. That's this day and age. You can do that.
Yeah.
So I think buying digital music is a great thing. I still do it sometimes, but I prefer to spend it digitally so I can get the full experience when I'm like dedicating myself to a record. Like I'm planning to pick up the new Paul Bearer because I believe I said that in a prior episode. Like I can't stop listening to that.
But you have already picked it up by now.
No, I've been sleeping on it, but it's so good. New Kendrick Lamar, which I'm going to talk about soon too. I want to pick that up, but we'll get there. All I'm saying is for this Neil Young thing, I hope it's as good as he's claiming it is. I mean, he's not the tech wizard, so we're just going to see. Is it going to be better than they said the quality was going to be on something like Tidal? I don't know. There was a lot of ambassadors for that, like Jack White, Jay-Z, and Beyonce. And
whatever happened to
the
that?
guy from Coldplay,
Chris
whatever.
Martin. Whatever happened to that? You don't hear no more about that.
Some stuff comes out exclusively on that first, and then it gets dropped everywhere. But it's also people that are ambassadors for like Beyonce. That happened with Lemonade. That came out last year, and it was only on Tidal for I don't know, man. It felt like 2 months, and then she was like, "Okay, now you can have this." I think she's just pushing for people to get that service. I'm sure it's great. I mean, I know of people that use it. I just don't know why I would switch from Spotify, because that was the first one. That was the one that's like, okay. I mean, at least for me, it was the new Pandora where, yeah, you had the radio, but now you can look up like anything and listen to that. Yeah. So I use it frequently.
Yeah, I know. I got into Spotify a little bit, and then I realized that what I was paying for, a monthly service. I wasn't buying these songs to like own them. I was only buying them to listen to them like a Netflix of some sorts, And I was like, fuck that. I'm just gonna start buying my shit off iTunes.
Yeah, but now you can like download albums, so you can scroll through, download an album. That helps for me, because sometimes if I'm like, random occasion I don't have service or anything, I can use that. Like, I have albums downloaded. Like, even if I'm like not on Wi-Fi, I don't want to use any data, download it.
Right.
But hey, that's just me. Moving on from that, there has been a little bit of a tease in the Queens of the Stone Age camp, because, well, first things first, like, they released this really obscure photo of the Q. It looks really similar to the like Clockwork thing, because it was all angular and kind of aggressive looking.
He's referring to the Q, if you didn't hear that part.
Yeah.
Their logo.
Yep. Well, now logo since I guess it's always been a thing, because Songs for the Deaf, it was the circle and the sperm.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess they've always been kind of toying with that.
Great fucking album.
Yeah. Well, if you get the vinyl version, like the official one, it's the circle and the sperm instead of the devil stick thing.
Yeah,
that's all the Songs for the Deaf.
I had two copies. I had the 2-disc one that actually came with a DVD of them in the studio creating it, and I think there was a couple of couple songs from the Troubadour when Grohl was on the drums and Nick was there, but it wasn't the entire show. It was only I think Monsters in Your Parasol and No One Knows, and that might have been it that they showed.
I like Monster in the Parasol. Yeah. That's a good one. Rated R is
one
of my favorites, dude. But where we're going with this is, they've also been starting to talk about the album a little bit. It's going to come out in the summer sometime. Josh said there's not going to be any guests on the album. I don't know exactly what that means for somebody like Dave Grohl, but we'll see. I mean, maybe he's playing drums on a few tracks, but I don't know what he's been doing lately either, because I don't think Foo Fighters are up right now. Wait, no. Maybe they are. I never know with them, but the thing is, you and I were also talking about the rumors that Dave Grohl might be touring in Ghost, and they're out with Maiden soon.
Yeah, but so. Ghost is going through some stuff right now, like legal problems, here lately. I don't know, I don't know the full extent of it, but the singer, he admitted this wasn't a band that just got together and made music. It was more or less like a Frankenstein creation,
side project of some sort. Yeah,
but. So far, the people that have come out and said we were members of Ghost, they're not famous. So maybe there are other famous people in the band, and those guys just won't come out. So maybe that theory that we've been having about him being in Ghost might be bullshit. It might be bullshit.
Well,
it was one of those things though. That was
Ghost
cool.
would be active, and then I'd see Dave Grohl doing something, and I was just kind of like.
I think Grohl was actually going on a book tour with his mom, because his mom just wrote a book about my son the rock star or something like that, and I seen something. I think she was on Ellen or one of those daytime talk shows, and of course Grohl's sitting there right next to her.
What?
So, yeah,
I gotta watch this later.
It's pretty interesting.
Wow, I didn't know that, man.
Yeah,
I'm gonna definitely look into that, because that just sounds. Because I love Ellen DeGeneres. I think she's awesome, and I never expected anybody like that to be on a show.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Ellen gets anybody on her show.
True. I'm actually just like I said, I'm going to talk about Kendrick Lamar. He's been on her show, and he did a song with a weird he kind of orchestrated it a little differently to where he's kind of singing some of it, because it was a guest vocalist on the album, but then he's singing a little bit it live.
Speaking of Kendrick Lamar, there's a new. A documentary show that's on CNN. It's called Soundtracks, and The Rock actually is an executive producer. And the first episode was about Martin Luther King's assassination, and then it starts talking about modern day stuff. It shows Obama getting the White House and all the stuff that happened in Ferguson, and then they had Kendrick Lamar, and I'm not sure what the song was, but I think at the end, like, he's on some kind of flagpole and he gets shot, and he's like falling down. He's still like rapping as he's falling down to the ground or whatever. I don't remember what the song was.
I think it's All Right.
Yeah, that is, because the people who were protesting, you know, like how like back in the 60s they had their own, you know, kind of like protest songs and stuff, and then people, when that song came out, they were singing that song as a protest. You know.
Yeah, I actually saw a video of that. Like,
did you?
That really got to me, man. I was like,
oh man, I gotta talk to Lance about that,
dude. I saw a video of that like after it happened, and I was like, man, like he truly is like the Tupac of this generation.
Yeah.
Because that album, I feel, tackles a lot of stuff in a really humble way.
Mm-hmm.
No pun intended for the album I'm about to talk about, actually, but it was a humble presentation that was very bold, like reshaping the genre for me. I think it just pushed a lot of boundaries, dude. I had to really digest that thing. I recommend anybody listening to Pimp a Butterfly. It's like a...
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
It's a modern-day masterpiece.
I'm going to have to check that album out now, that because, I mean, you've... There's been times where you've, like... Pimp a Butterfly, listen to it, fucker. You know, just like, you got to listen to it.
It's just different. It's just different. I mean, you got people like Thundercat on there, which... Thundercat was actually in Suicidal Tendencies for a time. That was crazy. Yeah.
Interesting.
But he's like more of like a jazz player. He does solo stuff, which his last album, Kendrick Lamar, was on a song, so you know they're kind of buddy. And then people like Snoop Dogg were on the album. On this album too, damn. It's he's got 2 guests, and actually a few that are on the album that he doesn't credit, like in the track. If you look through the track listing, one says Rihanna and the other says U2, and I was like, I don't know how that's gonna pan out, man. But you listen to the album, it really fits. I think it fits more than the track with Rihanna. Rihanna kind of like, I mean, she blends in because it's more in the same vein.
Yeah.
U2's left field. That's why I was like, But it works, man. They don't come into like the last third of the track, but it really builds up. And then when you hear Bono start singing, and you can really tell the band is playing instead of like an actual beat. It's,
right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll admit, I think this is a project that you really kind of have to digest as well, because it's not like To Pimp a Butterfly, and it's not like Good Kid, Mad City or anything. It's what he's doing now. I feel like there's some tracks that are... Because, okay, when you first start the album, Kendrick actually dies because he like comes up to this woman who's like looks like she's having trouble. He's like, "Hey, are you okay? Did you lose something?" And she's like, "Yeah, you lost your life." Pow! Killed him. And then it goes into this Fox News bit where they're actually bashing that song that you were talking about, because there's lyrics where he says like, "And we hate Popo, want to kill us dead in the street."
Yeah, I heard.
Show.
Yeah.
And they were tackling that, and because I said like I read something too about how Kendrick like responded to that. He was like, why would they take a song that's like about love and turn it into something so hateful? Like, that's the complete opposite of what he's getting, because they're taking it out of context just to kind of like say, hey, your kid shouldn't be listening to this. You know, this is really bad for what's going on right now. Like, why would he be advocating this? And he's not.
Right.
So I think the album is kind of like, it's fueled by the anger that he's had from the response to the album, because I'm sure he knew like people weren't going to get it. They were going to twist it, because everything gets twisted nowadays. So I feel like there's some parts where they're attacking that. Maybe not the whole thing is about that, but there's certain parts where he's attacking the media. There's certain parts where he's attacking maybe a particular individual and you don't know, but he's also talking about like how God has affected his life and stuff. I think it's worth a listen. It just takes some time to get used to, like the last album. But it's one of those things, man, where you spend more time with it. Kind of like, I would say pretty much any Rush album. The more time you spend with it, the better it sounds, truthfully.
Absolutely.
I mean, I bring Rush up because it took me a while to really get Caress of Steel, and now it's one of my favorite Rush albums. So, I mean, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, not trying to backtrack all the time, but, you know, like, say, like, Mastodon. Like, when I first got into Mastodon, it was really hard because I wasn't into that kind of, like, that vocal style, like, that gutter, you know, really abrasive, aggressive vocal style. I wasn't. Only reason why I got into Mastodon was because of Sea Beast, because the vocal style was definitely different. It sounded like Ozzy. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then you find out the rest of the album's not even, it doesn't even sound like that. It was very hard for me to get into at first. It did take until, like, I think I heard Divinations or something like that, where I was like, interesting, So that doesn't, and then I went back and I gave it another listen to, and I'm like, okay, I have more respect for it.
Yep, and then you listen to Blood Mountain, and then, because Blood Mountain's what turned me into a Mastodon fan. I listened to that first because I got into that right before Crack the Sky came out, and then I got Crack the Sky on vinyl, and then everything was history, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything usually is history after Crack the Sky.
But in addition to the Kendrick album, he also announced a tour today with Travis Scott and Dram, who actually, Dram is, I think Travis Scott might be too, but both of them are going to be on the new Gorillaz album.
Interesting.
The one with Dram's already out, but again, like I said it before too when we were talking about it, I don't hear Dram on that track. I mostly hear everything else, including a Damon Albarn. That vocal is way pushed to the front on that track, and then everything else feels like, oh, hey, here's the guest, and now I'm Damon Albarn, and now here's this guy again.
Right.
So, I think it's gonna be good. It comes out this week.
Any Florida dates for the tour?
I didn't see any.
Oh, would you go see him?
Who?
Kendrick Lamar. Would you go see him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, because I wanted to see him on the Pimp a Butterfly tour. Also, closest date was Georgia. And I was like, and then he didn't say it at first, but he plays the album all the way through.
Oh, nice.
For that whole tour.
Oh, nice.
There was one that was filmed. I don't know if there's going to be like a DVD maybe.
How long ago was that?
2015.
Okay, so that should, look it up, man, because it could have came out and you didn't know about it. That's happened many times. But then again, the new Stooges documentary, that guy's been making that film since 2006 or 7, I think. He's been making it for a long time, dude. Well, and you got to think too. I mean, a lot of shit has to go into that. You have to get people's, okay to use their shit. You got to get, pictures. You got to get all that stuff. I mean, the one cool thing is, you had Iggy Pop there, and he was pretty much the guy who's probably given all the money to it. Like, hey, man, let's make this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, if you're anywhere in those cities for the tour, check it out. I would go. I'm not anywhere close. It sucks. But I'm going to just briefly touch on some releases over the past, mostly week, but past couple weeks since we last recorded. And I'm going to start with the new Gas album came out this week. He's an ambient recorder. So, he has album names where, it's the name of the album and then all the track names are that album's name number 1. That album's name number 2. So it's kind of a concept you're supposed to listen to it all the way through. This one is kind of I really like it in some spots. I feel like he's kind of growing as a producer, but he's sticking with that same sound. I wish he'd experiment a little bit more, but it's still good for what it is.
Right.
New Coin album, indie pop band. Thought it was also pretty good for what it is. It's just kind of like an indie pop album you put on if you have friends over and you're just playing board games or something. Right. I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah. But it's just kind of in one ear, not the other sometimes. There are some tracks
it's good background music.
Oh, okay, I like what's going on here. And then it just all kind of sounds like the same. If you're going to have an album, it should be a sandwich. I don't want just ham the whole time. I want to get some cheese and some lettuce and some tomato. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got to have variety. But it's still good. I'd listen to it. Black Bear released an album called Digital Drug Lord. Album cover is interesting. It's just this, a chest of a white chick, and she doesn't have a shirt on, but there's pill bottles taped around her fucking chest.
Right.
It's kind of weird. Yeah. But I was like, okay, I want to listen to this, and it's pretty good. Check that out.
Okay.
It was the first project I heard of his, so I'm gonna look into everything else too. But I listened to that twice. Pretty good. Let's see. New Perfume Genius single. I know last time I talked about him too. He had the album announcement, and then now there's this other single. It's pretty good. Same with Little Dragon, except their album actually came out. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
She's very she sounds Japanese. It's kind of like a Bjork sort of thing, you know. It sounds like Bjork with a band, almost. This is weird to bring up too, but Paramore released a single that sounds like they trapped themselves in a room and listened to nothing but Duran Duran and Tears for Fears for hours on end, and then just came out and wrote that track. Interesting. Sounds really fun, really bubbly. I've never heard them sound like this before, so
yeah,
it's gonna be interesting. It's an album coming out in May, so we'll see how good that goes. That's actually the single that just dropped out of nowhere too, but I didn't pick up on it until all the hype that was building. I was like, this is Paramore, what is this? It's kind of like the Harry Styles thing I brought up last time. Like, who the hell in One Direction, before that single dropped, who would think that any one of them would sound anything like David Bowie?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
People can just change like that. That's why I'm always, keeping an eye out and, listening to stuff, because I want to hear people change.
Right.
So.
Well,
and if you're somebody like John Mayer, you don't change.
No. Well, I mean, John's been playing with the Dead for the past 2 years now, or ever since that Grateful Dead reunion.
I know that's honestly really cool. I thought his performances on that were great. I think he's a good singer and everything. Just the music he writes is just.
Well, I heard as a guitar player, he's been getting better. My buddy Mike was telling me, he's like, man, I know you don't like him, but that John Mayer, he's fucking kicking ass. I said, really? I was like, your body's a wonderland, John Mayer. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Actually, he wrote that for Jennifer Love Hewitt from Party of Five. And I Know What You Did Last Summer.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, that was what was said when it first came out. I was like, oh, he wrote this for Jennifer Love Hewitt. I'm like, well, at least she knows she has that song out there.
Oh man, but I would listen to it. Just don't take it as oh, this is Paramore if you hate Paramore.
Right.
I would take it as what it is, and I think it sounds like I said, they trapped themselves in a room and listened to an 80s playlist and came out and wrote that. Even the music video has weird 80s patterns all over the place, and they're wearing this flashy getup.
Have you listened to the new project with more or less No Doubt's band and the AFI guy? It's they joined forces and they have a new album out or new albums coming out with a tour and stuff.
I didn't know about that. No,
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, I haven't listened to it just because, I'm very skeptical about AFI. Davey Havoc. I'm really not a fan.
Yeah.
Well, but then I heard something recently. I guess within the past 2 years, and it started sounding better. It didn't sound an emo.
Well, maybe they kind of grew up kind of like Panic at the Disco. That new album sounds like just straight Frank Sinatra.
Oh yeah.
But hey, it's kind of like that. AFI is another emo band that maybe they just kind of changed something.
I guess. I don't know.
And finally, I want to talk about Benjamin Booker's single. That is awesome. He's like this. I wouldn't say new because he has an album or two out already, but he's like a psychedelic blues rock guitar player guy who's got this really, I don't know, it's like a raspy but not raspy voice. It's clean enough to where you can get the harmonies in, but also sounds like this, but it's nothing like Lemmy or anything.
Okay.
Check it out. Hey, there was a single that came out before this, but I didn't pick up on it just because, sorry.
Right. Okay.
They're both good actually, but the new one, I would say the one that came out most recent is good. Check out the album when it drops too. I don't remember what date it is, but I know it's sometime during the summer. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna listen to it too. I'm excited. It sounds like something new. Like maybe he was listening to some John Lee Hooker and White Stripes stuff, and he got inspired by that. It kind of sounds psychedelic like that, but also very bluesy.
Okay. What's his name again?
Benjamin Booker.
Benjamin. I'm gonna check that out. That sounds like something that's right up my alley too.
I need to listen to. I think his one or two albums that are already out. I saw that and I was like, okay, I need to go listen to that later because the two singles are pretty good. Mm-hmm. But I want to listen to what an album sounds like, and I think the new one's going to be good just off what I've heard.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely go home and check it out. I'll send you the link.
Yeah,
there's
that.
There's a couple links. Yeah,
absolutely.
But that's it for me. Recent releases are good. Well, most of them, and Yeah, that's the news.
I wanted to bring up on the B side of that it was announced that I think it's September 25th. Finally the 25th anniversary of Core is going to be reissued. It's going to be a full album and then live stuff. So I guess STP can't find a singer, so hey, why not release our stuff? And hey, I'm okay with that, dude. I mean, you gotta look at it like this. If anything, they'll become like the Doors. That guy is just way too he was way too good. You just can't replace that guy. You can try, but it's not going to be the same. So September 25th anniversary of Core will be out.
See, man, I thought that way about Lane Staley too, but I think William Duvall's good. He's great.
Look, I like
he's
William.
Just different than Lane.
But I thought, do you remember the Damage Plan Jerry Control song they did together, that Ash to Ashes? I thought the singer for Damage Plan and Jerry sounded perfect together. I thought they sounded better than him and William. So, like, when it was coming up, like, oh, there's going to be a new lead singer, I'm like, I hope they get the guy from Damage Plan. Because that guy fucking kicks ass. But of course, they went with something totally different. And I was like, all right, well, William's good. He is good, but...
And he works. I think he's a great singer.
Yeah, and he brings the extra guitar element to the band that they didn't really have before. I know Lane every now and then would pick up a guitar, but William plays guitar all the time. It's kind of like a Soundgarden type of thing. Right. So anyway, September 25th, look it up. And on that note, we're actually going to send it over to the Mooch right here. He's going to talk to you about Florida's death metal scene. And who's the band we're talking about today?
Well, actually, before we get to that, we just want to bring out some bad news over within the death metal world. Unfortunately, we lost somebody very important within the death metal world, within the band Internal Bleeding from New York. Their drummer, Bill Tolley, aside from him being the drummer of Internal Bleeding, he was also working for the fire department for New York City. And unfortunately, while he was on duty, he fell from, I believe, from the top roof, and he unfortunately lost his life on the line of duty.
Wow.
So before we get to our topic, I just want to say, rest in peace with Bill Toddy. I actually saw Internal Bleeding a couple years back on a tour, or when they came to Tampa, and it's definitely a good band. Yeah. Definitely a great band.
Was he with them then, or was he...
Yeah, he was with them there at the time.
So what? So he's a firefighter, and then when the band goes on tour, you're like, hey, I can't be a firefighter.
No, he goes with them on tour.
Oh, that's what I mean. But he tells his fire department, hey, I can't do it now. I got to go on my.
Yeah. I'm sure they give him good vacation time, whatever. Come on, you're working for the fire department in New York.
Yeah, we're not trying to bring a light of it. I just don't know how that really works.
I don't know. I would have to work there to know.
Right. But anyway, R.I.P.
Rest in peace. But,
Rest in peace.
So this particular episode, since we kind of had to put it off a couple times, but now we finally got through it after, little hiccups here and there. If you didn't get from the last hint that I made when we were talking about Cannibal Corpse, this time I'm going to be talking about Tampa's own Morbid Angel. Great band, honestly. They've been around since 1984, when they haven't even released a new album yet. This was around the time when they had Trey Azagoth, the original lead guitarist, and also Mike Browning, who was the drummer / vocalist at the time. Cool thing about Mike Browning, he also is well known for being in Nocturnus, death metal band also from Tampa as well. And lately he actually was in a band called After Death, which is actually ironic because later on, as time grew by, they decided to want to revive a Nocturnus. So, the members of Nocturnus and the members of After Death eventually combined, and they all became Nocturnus AD, which is pretty cool because they also have a keyboardist in the band as well, and they also play more technical, progressive with their sound as well. So
that's cool.
Oh yeah, definitely
adding the ambiance of a keyboard.
Absolutely, absolutely, and in death metal, no doubt.
Doesn't Dark Tranquility have like stuff like that, like ambience, like with the keyboards and stuff like that?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes, they do, and sometimes it may sound a little bit electronica as well.
Okay.
In some of their earlier stuff.
Gotcha.
But anyways, some of the well-known, members of Morbid Angel that have come and gone, especially, you have the famous David Vincent, who eventually decided to go out and do country. Don't know why, but whatever. But he's
More
definitely
power to him.
more power to him. It's whatever. But he's definitely the backbone of Morbid Angel back in the time when he was definitely more active. During the days of Altar of the Madness and up until Domination.
We could actually call him the Hootie from the Hootie and the Blowfish version of death metal.
Oh yeah.
Well, I
pretty
mean,
much.
Darius Rucker leaves Hootie and the Blowfish, goes plays country, and he makes a bigger career out of playing country than he did alternative music.
And it would be pretty ironic if the same happens for David Vincent.
Oh, yeah.
Although David did decide on apparently reuniting with some of the other former members of bands or even other people to do a side project which pretty much plays original classic Morbid Angel stuff called I Am Morbid. Mm-hmm. Just so they can go through all that legal right.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Hank 3 does. Hank Williams 3.
Yeah.
Like he literally will put out a straight up country hillbilly album, and then he will drop a doom as fuck heavy metal album.
Yeah, and then other famous, well known in the death metal scene as far as members who were in Morbid Angel were Pete Sandoval, who is currently in Terrorizer. Another well known is Eric Rutan, who is the current vocalist / guitarist of Hate Eternal, which I will be talking about later at some point later on, since they're from Tampa, Tampa as well. So, but what I like about Morbid Angel is just that I just love that I just love their fast guitar picking and definitely. Reminds you of some early thrash, especially when you hear, Altars of Madness.
Mm-hmm. I was just about to say
album.
that.
Altars of Madness.
Yes, and also I also like that in their second album, Blessed Are the Sick, they actually went for a little bit more of a sludgy sound to it because they started playing slower.
I see that in
really
some
cool.
of Covenant too,
and Covenant a little bit too, but it was definitely more prominent. They started to experiment with slower picking at Blessed Are the Sick. Another cool thing is that what I like about this band is just the fact that I get the fact that it's pretty much the same thing. A lot of evil shit that they always talk about, but it's just the way that it's orchestrated, just the way that they play it, especially when listening to their third album, Covenant, definitely great album. I actually got to see them for the first time back in 2014 when they headlined the Summer Slaughter tour at the time, which is really cool. First time seeing them, glad I got to see them as far as that goes. They definitely played, a lot of the stuff from Altars of Madness to Domination. They only play like maybe one or two from that album that we will not talk about. But other than that...
Oh, you mean this one?
That crappy album? Yeah, no, fuck that album.
What's the name of the album? So
Illa Divinum Insanus.
Okay.
Or what
The
I like to
first one
call...
without Pete Sandoval.
Pretty much.
And what year was that?
That was 2011 when Illa
gotcha.
Divinum Insanus came out. Or what I like to call Illa Divinum Anus.
Anus. Interesting.
Because
I mean, I know it was a long time between Heretic and that album, but I mean, come on.
Could do better. I mean, I get that, David Vincent actually was playing, for an industrial metal band, during the time that he, took from, being away from Morbid Angel after Domination, because they just left to the band. And, when Formula's Fatal to the Flesh came out, that's when Steve Tucker came in. To take over for bass and vocals. Mm-hmm. Now, I got to listen to, some of the Steve Tucker era vocals, and definitely much more aggressive than it was with David Vincent.
Gotcha.
Especially with nowadays, because when I saw them live in 2014, yeah, it's definitely nice and refreshing that they're playing, the more classic stuff. But, you can kind of tell that it's not as good as it was probably when they first started out.
Yeah.
Because especially with the kind of crap that David Vincent wants to play, nowadays, whether it be industrial metal, which nothing wrong with industrial, because I definitely like some industrial here and there, but why would you, yes.
Yeah.
But why would you want to make a Morbid Angel album with industrial elements on it? That's not what they're known for. Yeah, I heard there's, experimenting, but not with a very well-known band like that, especially.
Well,
That'd be like
look
if
at Metallica.
that'd be like if Cannibal Corpse decided to play fucking banjos on their fucking albums. Could you imagine that?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Metallica and banjos, actually, I know there's like some weird off compilation of Metallica banjo style. Like this one guy,
There's one
was like,
with
"Hey, let's
Slayer.
get a whole bunch of banjos together." Yeah,
There's one with Slayer too.
I think there was
it's
one
Rain
for
of Blood.
like a lot of
Yeah.
thrash bands like that.
Yeah.
Like even Testament maybe, but like they do banjo and do like Metallica covers.
There is a duo. I'm not sure what they're called, but it's a guy and a girl, and they play acoustic instruments, and the only thing they do is play instrumentals, and they always cover like Metallica. Like I think they play like Orion, and it sounds better than Metallica.
Apocalyptica.
No, it's not them. It's like something Rodriguez. I think they're from Mexico or something like that. I don't know who they are, but I remember the Mad Monk was actually a fan of theirs. He was like, "Man, check this out." It was like, what the? And it's just them, just two people creating this sound, and it's like, wow. And it's Metallica, no less. Like they're very well known for covering Metallica.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Same with Apocalyptica. I don't know why people get famous off of playing, Metallica, but I mean, I get it because Metallica's
One of the greatest bands, or at least greatest American bands of all time.
I know. That's the thing.
Also, cool trivia is that with after the release of Covenant by Morbid Angel, their music video "God of Emptiness" actually got featured on Beavis and Butthead.
Interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Love
Isn't
Beavis
that
and
crazy? They've also had like Pantera and Korn and Deftones and stuff. And
At the Gates was
At the Gates was
on
also
BBC.
Yeah, definitely.
but they've also had like some rap shit too.
Well, what was that? They had Billy Idol in there one time, and instead of saying "and I'm dancing with my," he goes "and I'm playing with myself," and then like people just sweat, because that's what Billy was doing, sweat.
Yeah, and especially with the success of Covenant, they had both Rapture and God of Emptiness music videos was featured on MTV.
Like Headbangers Ball
like
and
on
shit.
Headbangers Ball, which is probably what you would never see nowadays, especially with the crap MTV puts out
I know there
nowadays.
was a song in there too that was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Stand By. I'm gonna look into this.
I haven't,
but I will,
I haven't watched that one, to be honest. Which one?
Oh, you know what? And Enshrined by Grace that was on Heretic was on Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, nice. I'll have to watch it then.
Yeah, it was the one that came out in 03 though.
Yeah, that one. That was the
newer
last.
one
That was the
you see
last one that they came out
Jennifer
before
Beals,
Illa
not Jennifer
Divina
Beals.
came out.
Is it Jennifer Beals? The one from Seventh
That
Heaven?
one?
Yeah, she was in that one. Her boyfriend got killed. Go figure. They all get killed.
Yeah. And then they've also got to tour. Morbid Angel got to tour with some very famous bands, especially bands like Black Sabbath, Motorhead. They got to tour with them, and I'm pretty sure they may have toured with Pantera because I know that even Hate Eternal toured with Pantera because there were times where when Pantera came out, Eric Rutan would also play with them.
Right. That was what I was actually going to say. Like the first time I ever heard of Morbid Angel was for a Pantera show. My cousin was living here, and he was like, "Dude, let's go see Pantera." I'm like, "All right, well, let's go see Pantera." He's like, "I've never seen him before. I've heard some of their stuff, like Walk and Cowboys from Hell and stuff like that."
Whew.
And he was like, "Oh,
I would be like,
Morbid Angel's going to be opening up for him," and like, okay, cool, that's cool. But when it came around time for them to be here, that was when it was like the band was on the way out, and
Right.
the tour got canceled because something, I'm sure something with Phil, so the tour got canceled. So we never got to see Pantera nor Morbid Angel. So, but that was the only time that I can ever remember Morbid Angel ever coming up was for a Pantera show.
Right, exactly. But although just like with Morbid Angel, though, they've had his fair share, of members, coming in and out of the bands, and especially, Pete Sandoval, one of their very, well-known drummers at the time. He sometime after Illa Divinum Insanus, not directly after it, but sometime afterwards, he actually left Morbid Angel. No, actually, he left before Illa Divinum Insanus came out, because not only was he not fond of that sound, but also because Pete Sandoval claimed that he converted to Christianity. And because of that, he didn't want to play in a band that was just very, anti-religious, very demonic, things like that. So, which is, I find pretty ironic that he's still playing for Terrorizer.
Yeah, but same thing happened to Head, when Head became a Christian, he left Korn. He was like, hey, I can't be in a band with people who are going off and doing drugs and wanting to sleep with women, and I'm trying to be sober, I'm trying to be a Christian. And his whole beliefs did a 360 overnight, man. I mean, I remember seeing pictures of him getting baptized and thinking and everything else after that, for years he wouldn't talk about Korn. And if he did talk about Korn, he'd be like, I've got to pray for those guys, But hey, he's back in the band now, and he's rocking and rolling.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, if people want to find comfort in religion, that's definitely fine, but don't push it too hard on other people, especially if they don't want to hear about it,
Yeah.
But, it is what it is.
Well, that's probably the reason why he left the band. He was like, hey, later.
Later, there you go. But, and also, some of the members that did come up, that did eventually replace Pete Sandoval was Tim Young, actually. Mm-hmm. Very well-known drummer in the death metal scene. He drummed for, many great bands such as Hate Eternal. He performed with Vital Remains, Nile, Decrepit Birth, and even performed with Divine Heresy, which was a side project of, can't think of his name, the guitarist for Fear Factory. Dino.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dino, yeah, because that's the side project for Dino, Divine Heresy, which... haven't heard anything recent from Divine Heresy 2 as well. The only two albums they came out with, Bleed the Fifth and Bringer of Plagues. They're a metalcore / death metal band, which is really awesome. Wow. Their first vocalist of Divine Heresy, he's definitely very awesome. His name was Tommy Vex Cummings. He was he kind of looked like he was probably could have been the next Howard Jones, like Killswitch Engage, but a little bit more aggressive than Howard Jones.
Gotcha. Okay.
But definitely great other band, another band you guys should check out. Divine Heresy if you haven't done so yet, though. With Morbid Angel, though, they've had different other members, not aside from Tim Young, but they also had Destructor, who used to be who actually is a member of the band Zyklon. Zyklon, I can't pronounce that name, but he's from Norway, and with those guys in the band, for a little while though, they've been with Morbid Angel for about maybe a year, because sometime last year, it wasn't until when not the last year but the year before, but it wasn't until both Destructor and Tim Young left the band, but eventually also David Vincent left the band at the time, so that just left Trey by himself. So who's going to take over with the the rest of the members while they quit? Well, that's when around that same time is when Steve Tucker came back once again as the vocalist and bassist of Morbid Angel when he was back then, and then they also had two new guys that are in other different bands. Like I know we talked about this at one point when we announced one of the tours that they're doing, coming up recently, since Morbid Angel is going to be coming around touring with Suffocation, Revocation, and Withered this summer.
I need to see Revocation
Yes.
and Suffocation, and if Morbid Angel says
with Steve Tucker.
Yep.
With Steve Tucker.
Are they coming anywhere around here? I'm sure.
Yes, they are. They're coming to Orlando. I think at the beach.
Florida. Okay.
They're coming to the beach, I believe, so I'll have to get my tickets. I forgot what exact date at this moment, but they are going to come here. So I definitely would like to see them. And, honestly, all in all, Morbid Angel, great band. Hopefully I can make it to this coming show that they're coming, very soon this summer.
Have you seen them before?
I already told you, back in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, when they were headlining the Summer Slaughter Tour. Great show altogether. Second Summer Slaughter tour that I've been to. Surprisingly this time, no hijacking of some retard wanting to shoot a band, for not liking their music or something.
With Job for a Cowboy?
Yeah, that Job for a Cowboy incident. Actually, they actually didn't play in Tampa. They played actually in St. Pete at the State Theater for the 2014 portion of this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because to be honest, I did not like to drive there because for some reason, I guess I have a phobia of driving in bridges and things like that, especially when you have bodies of water under you. So it's like, you gotta be alert at all times.
You would hate to drive in New Orleans, dude, because you're going to be definitely driving over a lot of bridges, a lot of water.
Fucking God.
Dude, when we were in there, we were driving on this highway bridge, and I swear to God, I don't know... There definitely had been some people dying making this bridge, because, it's going right over the bayou. You're looking down, water, swamp. You fucking go over there, even if you break down, you're fucked. Because there's really no way to get over. It's not like on I-4 or the 408 where you can just, you have a nice little safety, you can get over there.
Yeah.
No, there's none of that shit in New Orleans.
Yeah, fuck that. That's why I would never want to go there, especially. And, what really triggered it was, I think it was like at one time where I can't remember what bridge it was, but one of the bridge collapsed because it wasn't built properly. Ever since then, just like, I just started getting a phobia of driving over bridges. So I'm just like, when I'm driving,
you should look in the Mothman.
God damn it, God damn it, God damn it, God damn it.
You should look in the Mothman. There was this, I don't want to say a fictitious creature, but there was a creature, I think in like the mid to late 60s. I'm not sure what the town was, but supposedly if the Mothman came around, it was mainly just to like warn people, I guess. But, of course he looked like a demon. And people had seen him around this bridge and whatever. And the bridge eventually wound up collapsing and I think like killing 200 or 300 people in the collapse, man. So, and then of course,
like the Chupacabra?
Kind of like that, man. He
so
flies.
That's definitely famous in the Hispanic world.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. He doesn't kill people, or he doesn't, he scares the hell out of you.
Or drink blood from livestock.
No, nothing like that.
Oh, man. Yeah.
That's what the Chupacabra is definitely known for.
The Chupacabra that they caught on camera a couple of years ago, that thing looked like...
Quote, unquote.
It was like a dog. But they could never figure out the speech, or not species, but like the species of the dog. They knew it was a canine, but they didn't know what the fuck it was.
I'll have to see that, because there are always a lot of hoaxes and shit. But all in all, Morbid Angel, definitely a really good band. Definitely one of the main big bands, in the death metal scene. If there were such thing as a big four like it is in thrash,
right.
With the obvious bands that we were mentioning, if there was a big four for the death metal, or something equivalent to that, Morbid Angel should at least be one of them.
Of course.
Death would be the Metallica of death metal.
Exactly.
Cannibal Corpse would be like Megadeth.
Then Deicide.
No, Cannibal Corpse is like the Slayer.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Slayer.
But then what would you put Deicide in Obituary?
That's true.
That's true. I could see Obituary doing something like Anthrax.
Because what I like about, especially with Obituary, because they're very groovy. Like, yeah, they can be aggressive, but they're definitely groovy as hell.
That's why I was thinking Anthrax, because they're the more like, hey, we're gonna try other shit too. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, here's I'm the Man. Like,
right.
We're talking about like, pissing.
It's like some
on
Beastie
shit.
Boys type of shit. Right?
Yeah.
And especially with with Morbid Angel coming up with different styles, not just always fast picking, but I like how with how they're transitioning, whether it be slow picking, slow tempo, very sludgy at times, but definitely still aggressive. And what I like too, one more thing, just to end this off, what I like about Morbid Angel too, in Blessed Are the Sick, there's actually an acoustic piece on there.
Nice.
It's actually called Desolate Ways. It's a great, song, actually. You should actually take a listen to it. It's actually a very beautifully, well-written acoustic piece. And when you listen to it, if you were to listen to it and you were not told that it was written by Morbid Angel, you would be surprised as hell. Mm-hmm. So definitely check that song out, but obviously check every single lineup of Morbid Angel, whether it be David Vincent era or Steve Tucker era. Just brush away the anus one.
The anus.
Brush that one away. There you go.
Brush the anus away.
Brush it away. Yeah.
Don't forget to wipe it, boy.
Yeah. But, before we end this off, though, I just want to let you know As far as for my next topic, though, it's going to be it's going to be frozen in time for the moment, but just like every single human being, slowly we rot.
And on that note, we're going to go ahead and take our first official break here. When we come back, we're talk about
what? Wait, no Boozini Theater? What's happening here?
No, that's the whole thing. We were talking about the show.
Why aren't you doing it? Explain.
I am doing an episode on the probably one of the greatest albums of all time, Tommy. So I had to put all my attention on that instead of doing the Bodini Theater. So that will actually come back the next episode, which I will be reviewing Gimme Danger, the brand new Stooges documentary, which I just got last night. Amazing documentary. So listen to that for the next one. But until then, we're going to take our first official break. When we come back, we begin with Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind boy. Well, before I forget, we need to bring up the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Yella in Yella's Corner. Take it away, Yella.
My father was a very rich man. He had everything he could ever want. Then one day, I started getting into the habit of dressing up like a clown. Then I overheard father speaking with my mother. I have 3 beautiful girls. They are all very successful. And yet my son, my only boy, chooses to wear a costume. He started to cry in disappointment. Then the next morning, I walked up to my father and I said, "Father, do you think I will ever be normal? Do you think I can be like the other children?" He said, "Yes, my boy, you are like the other children." My father is not a liar, but that morning he told me a white lie. It was the first time I cried in silence. I didn't want father to see my tears. It was painful enough for him to watch me dress up as a clown every morning. I would wear purple lipsticks and put makeup all over my face. I always knew I was stranger than the other children, but I think on that day, father realized the same thing. That is, I am not normal.
So anyway, I want to end this series of albums, so to speak. You know, we talked about the Kid A's, we talked about the Amnesiacs. Definitely a storytelling album. And you know my love for this band. You know I love The Who. I mean, The Who to me is probably next to Pink Floyd, the greatest bands of all time. I don't think you just can't touch those two bands. Anyway, one of the greatest albums of all time. It was what, for the most part, gave them a career, because they had a little career coming up, you know, from their teen years, so to speak, up to.
It's kind of like a
this
Beatles
moment.
thing, you know, because they had their
It was like
Beatles mania thing,
right.
and then they started doing more experimental
Pop art.
stuff like Revolver, and I feel like the Who took a similar route.
Yeah, I mean, they had the the Union Jack jackets, and it was a very pop artish type of thing, and John Entwistle would play, and he'd have like this vest with all these medals, and like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? And of course, we're talking about Tommy. Tommy, for the Who, was what A Night at the Opera was for Queen. Both of the bands at this particular moment were literally on the verge of ending. No money, nothing. Nothing was happening. Even though all these videos of them with the girls and singing along, or like Top of the Pops, or whatever type of late night show or music show that was going on at that time, they would be on it. But you'd think, hey, this band's definitely having some money, or having some sort of fame. There's money to be made, or money they are making. And I guess it wasn't true, because whatever they were making, the managers would kick back and put it back into the band. So anyway, come 1968, Pete does this interview with Ian Warner of Rolling Stone, who is the senior editor. He is the one who actually came up with the concept, or came up with Rolling Stone. He did an interview with him in 1968 where Ian actually asked him, of course, like normal questions you'd ask Pete Townsend in 1960. Why do you smash your guitar? Or, where do you see rock and roll going from here? And where's the Who going at? And he started bringing up the concept, or the idea of a deaf, dumb, and blind boy, who there wasn't the element of pinball at that particular moment, of course, but as the story would progress, he'd become a pinball wizard and more or less become a demigod. And anyway, he was telling about the different themes of the album, musically and everything. It was just going to be this total work that was going to have a beginning, middle, and end, and different songs, elaborating, coming together, more or less, like he said, a rock opera. And there was no rock operas at that time. There was nothing. I don't even know if maybe Sgt. Pepper's might have been considered a concept album to a certain extent, but I don't think along this line like Tommy was. Tommy was a full-blown opera. It was about this boy named Tommy. His parents, his father was in the war, and him and his mom, whatever, got together, had the kid, or she got pregnant. He went to war. He got a telegram, said, it's a boy, Mr. Townsend, it's a boy. So yeah, so Pete actually was considered a little bit like Tommy, and to a certain extent, but later on, Roger more or less became Tommy. And anyway, Tommy would grow up, and his father would be killed in the war, World War II. He got killed in the war, and his mother started sleeping around and got with this guy. And by the way, I'm totally going from the story of the film, because there was actually a film that came out in '75, which I will go into later on, and I'm going through that story. But anyway, he happens to see his father come home, from the war. His mother was sitting there with her new beau, like I said, thinking he's dead, and I think something happens to the dad. He dies. I don't know if they killed him, or he actually stepped back and broke his neck. And so Tommy sat there and seen the whole thing, and while that's going on, you can hear, you didn't see it, you didn't hear it, you wouldn't say nothing or no one that anyone would believe you, more or less, is what they were singing about to him. And so his brain is taking that in, like, I didn't see it, I didn't hear it, I didn't, okay, and then they're keep on saying that to him, and it's going off in his brain, and then it just clicks, and he becomes deaf, dumb, and blind. So from the age of 5, he didn't see, he didn't hear, he didn't do anything. Come along with, say, like, The Amazing Journey and Sparks, which, as a piece, it's considered kind of like a psychedelic experience. They're singing, but the rest of the song, or the part of Sparks, is just an instrumental. And as a live piece, that would be the point where the distortion comes in, the fucking, the guitars are playing in and fucking just going crazy ape shit. Townsend puts his fucking, foot on the riser and just rips it up, and so. But in as the album, it was just more or less like a dream thing, kind of going from one element to being this deaf, dumb, stupid boy, where there's some dark figures would show up, like Uncle Ernie, who, if you listen to that song, there's definitely some thoughts on rape and molestation and stuff like that. I mean, and especially, like, I've always thought of that element, especially in 1968 or 69 when they're writing this, like, wow, that is so revolutionary. I cannot believe these fucking guys are talking about that openly. And you're like, what the fuck?
Like, if you look at this story in Tommy and you look at another concept album like The Wall, you see a lot of similarities because, like, the character in The Wall, Pink, his dad goes to war, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if, like, maybe Tommy was the platform or blueprint for concept albums in general, or I guess some people would even refer to a lot of prog albums as, like, storytelling albums.
Right.
But what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, would you agree, like, this would be considered, like, the very first storytelling album that actually followed an entire thread of music? Because there is a chord progression that they first play on Overture that gets brought up throughout the show, and then, songs down the line to even the last song, it shows back up, like that chord progression that I don't...
Just like The Wall, where you get, in the Hey You, and it goes, for that whole, like, second half of that album.
Which
Same
was
thing.
Like, what was Another Brick in the Wall? There was 3 of them on the first side.
Exactly, and all of them start the exact same way, but just, different flavor.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, I truly am trying to think of another album that was truly a storytelling one that was released before this.
Because
like, I'm thinking of, like,
Yes
7
came out with any storytelling album.
No, not till, like, closer to the edge.
Right.
But I'm thinking of, like, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, which is, I'm sure Mooch, that's like a classic concept album right there from metal.
And there's even a song that was Cousin Kevin, which on the album, it's on the album, but when they play it live, they never played it live. They never, especially in the 60s, which I will go into later, but, there was definitely, like, the album was like 25 songs, and you go see them, they play like 18 of the 25. So they would definitely take parts out, But, yeah, I think as a concept, it's like a wall. It's very dark, especially somebody like Cousin Kevin. Cousin Kevin, hey, you can't see me, so let's play tag, and he's literally, like, beating the shit out of the kid. He's doing stuff like, hey, I want to, he trips him and does some really wicked shit, to this poor guy who can't see or hear, but it's just the antagonist. And that's what makes Pete as a writer, even though he didn't write those. The Uncle Ernie and Cousin Kevin were both written by the Ox. He wrote those stuff. And he even said himself, he was like, I couldn't write that stuff. He's like, thank God for John. He was able to write that stuff because that was just too deep for him. Like, he had his own stuff coming out on the album that he was like, hey. So I guess stuff that happened, like the Ox wrote, maybe something that happened to him or something that happened to somebody he knew.
Yeah, like in real life.
Exactly. And then you get to a song such as Acid Queen, which...
Oh, it's one of my favorite moments, too.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, you get to that song and you kind of think, well, is she a drug? Or is she sex? Or is she both? Or is it a metaphor for...
Yeah, because
just
it could be
things
a
like
double-edged
that?
sword, too.
I mean, I'm thinking like, you know, Gypsy and Acid Queen, you know, like, pay me before we start. Like, okay, I'm paying you before sex, you know. But it could also be for other things, too. I mean, it's a metaphor for such, you know, for such things. You know, in the Acid Queen, it could be acid, it could be heroin, it could be fucking sex, it could be whatever. Whatever they do to this kid. You know? And then, of course, you come up to, like, the Pinball Wizard, which a lot of people know the song. Is a very famous song. It's probably, you know, that whole... That bong is such an anthem. It fucking rings out. And for years, I was thinking, I was like, how is Pete hitting that dong and he's playing that guitar like that? And then come to find out it was the Ox. And that was when I discovered how much he had an impact of the sound, like how much the Ox's bass playing was detrimental to that band, as well as Tommy. I mean, everyone in the band came across as amazing. Mooney's drum playing was
all the time.
Fucking dude. Like, if there was ever an album that was meant for orchestral style of playing like he did, it was Tommy. I mean, there's fills on that thing that it just goes off, and you're like, wow, holy shit, holy God. Or even, you know, later on, you know, on other stuff. But that was when he came to the forefront. I think that was when Mooney's drumming, and as well as his crazy shit, you know, was definitely on full alert. You know, it was definitely in its apex at that moment. I also play the horn on the beginning of the overture. That horn section. That's all that whistle. He actually was he was actually a trumpet player before he became a bass player. And the reason why he put down the trumpet and picked up the bass, because he realized he couldn't get chicks with the trumpet, so he dropped that and picked up the bass. And I was kind of like, well, it kind of sounds like Flea in a way from Chili Peppers, because, you know, Flea, he's an amazing jazz player, but he's just an equal amazing bass player. So,
yeah.
But, you know, and then, of course, as the album goes on, I mean, like I said, Pinball Wizard in itself, not just because the song, I mean, but where it sits in the mood, in the mood of the album. Like, he's this pinball wizard. He can't see, he can just feel the vibes on the pinball. That's what makes him so great, how he's able to do it. And he's beating all these people, and then he becomes this, you know, messiah kind of figure, you know, kind of thing. And then they come along and they say, hey, we have this doctor who can heal him, and they take him to him and try to heal him, and he eventually, you know, comes to. And when he comes to, he more or less, you know, people view him as a demigod then, because it's like a healing thing. You know, he starts telling people, like, how he was, and he starts becoming like a Jesus figure of some sorts, and people start following him. You know, you get to a song like Sally Simpson, which is more or less just like a ode to like Elvis of some sorts. You know, that's what Tommy became. He becomes like an Elvis figure. You know, he plays these shows and people come in droves to see him, and it's all this religious, you know, quasi-religious, occultist type of thing going on between him and them, and, you know, I'm you, you're me, let's go on and kind of do our thing. And then eventually they turn on him. You know, it's kind of like Jesus. You know, I definitely see a kind of similar story with Tommy a little bit and with Jesus, because everybody's all for him, and we love him, and we will follow you everywhere you go. And then they get to a certain point where they just turn on him. They start throwing rocks at him. They start saying you're nothing, and then he goes, which to the end of the album, see me, feel me, touch me, heal me, and that is one of the biggest climactics of an album. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, you've said you've listened to the album a couple times. I mean,
I own it.
It's one of your favorite albums. I mean, what's your take on it?
Well, By the Who is definitely one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
This and Who's Next. I mean, this was the golden streak for them.
Right.
This was how a band like Maiden has Number of the Beast through I don't know, what would you say, Seventh Son?
Yeah.
It's probably that was their golden years. This is the golden years for them.
This is the beginning of the golden years, too. I mean, this is...
And what a creative idea. I mean, like you said, for the time, this was a boundary-pushing thing.
I mean, it deals with everything from, child molestation, bullying, murder...
Yeah, and then...
occultist. I remember...
Sacrifice, even, in some instances.
One of the things that actually gave me the idea to do this episode originally was... there's this girl I work with, and I was telling her about Tommy, and she's like, well, what is it about? And I said, it's about a deaf, dumb, and blind boy who becomes a demigod. And that was the best way I can actually describe it. And she goes, okay... Yeah, send it to me, all right. But, when she listens to it, she's like, yeah, I like it. I like how each song tells a story. It tells the story as it goes along.
It's funny because one of my favorite things about Tommy isn't even just, the story. It's Pete, dude. There's tracks in 1921 that the guitar playing is just... That some of those riffs are just, wow. And like you said, it really called for Mooney's really big, full, almost Danny Carey level drum style.
Well, listen to Sparks, especially in the album when he goes dun dun, and you hear Mooney go ta 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 ta. But it's those big old fucking, cymbals, like you would hear at a fucking opera, or listening to an orchestral, type of thing, like a symphony. And like how you said, definitely the Danny Carey of his day. He took his style, and like we said before, any one album with that kind of style that he had was Tommy. I mean, Sparks, that whole. Some of that stuff, especially on the album version, just the album is wow, I cannot believe that he went there. He's going. There's his playing is so landscaping on this album. I mean, he's definitely the maestro, so to speak. Of the band, he's the guy with the baton.
Yeah.
He's telling them where how to go, and. I mean, we're talking about Summer... Even though I think the Summer Love was considered 1967, that whole hippie flower power was still very much in full effect in 1969, especially when Tommy was released. And the thing that I love about the fucking Who is I consider them to be one of the very first punk bands. And what I mean by that is they fucking hated all that hippie shit. They were inspired by it, but they fucking couldn't stand it. I mean, they really couldn't. They hated playing alongside the Grateful Dead. I seen an interview one time. Pete said Timothy Leary and the Grateful Dead came over to England one time, and he's like, I fucking hate the Dead. I hate Timothy Leary. I hate Ashbury. I hate all that shit. Stay the fuck out of my country, kind of deal. Go back to San Francisco, kind of deal. And Roger was the same thing, dude. I mean, they were on when this album came out and it started selling, they more or less went to America and fucking conquered. That was when, mixed with the album, mixed with the times, mixed with them as a live band. I mean, you know as well as I know, 1968 to 1971, nobody can fucking touch The Who as a live band. Nobody. Stones, yeah, they might have been considered, oh, we're the greatest rock. No, fuck that. You couldn't hold a candle to The Who.
Your Live at Leeds is my number one live album ever. It's hard to say that, though, because, I mean, it's lengthy, it's ballsy, and I know we're about to get into that, my friend. But
yeah.
It's very much in line with Tommy.
Yeah.
And very much in line with this era, so, I mean,
Right.
It's just the prime example of what you're talking about.
I mean, this era is considered what people consider the golden years. Even it doesn't matter whatever the Who did after this. It really didn't. They will always be remembered for this work, and we will be discussing the live era on the next segment because it's very much instrumental and important as the live or as the album itself. I mean, it's two separate entities. There's the great album, and then there's the band that goes out and plays live. Now, on the before we actually go to our next segment, and we take it easy, but I definitely think that this was the album, again, like I said, that made the Who. They actually were quoted as saying, John Entwistle actually was quoted as saying that people actually thought our band name was Tommy. Like, there was no Who there anymore. It was like, oh, we're going to go see Tommy. We're going to go see that band Tommy. Yeah, oh, you and Tommy? He's like, no, I'm in the Who, but we do play Tommy. So, and on that note, we're going to go ahead and take a little break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the most equally important as the album is. The live incarnation is just as important. So we'll be back in just one moment. So anyway, we have the album, and then we have the live incarnation. Now, this is a real interesting concept because, well, it never was never done. It had never been done before. But what they would do, they would manage out like 2 sets. They would do like the greatest hits kind of deal, like songs like people know, Happy Jack, or A Quick One While He's Away, or Heaven and Hell, I'm a Boy, such songs as that. And they would play these songs, and then they kind of would go into Tommy. Now, this is also a first for a band. I don't think there's ever been a band that has ever went out before this and played an entire album all the way through. Straight through. Like a marathon. You play the entire... Well, I would say entire, because like I said before, like the actual album is like 25, 26 songs, and then the live incarnation was usually like 19 songs, I think it was. So it was like...
Yeah, so they like chop and screw with it.
Yeah, I mean, in the songs that, that weren't on there, you definitely... They weren't noticeable. Because there's like 2... Like, okay, Amazing Journey and Sparks. Sparks is more or less what the overture later, like the other 2 songs down on the album was. That was I think that was a 10-minute instrument piece that was on the album. And as a live piece, they would cut that out. Sparks would be more or less like the pathway that, it would go from that song and on to the next part of the story, so to speak. The songs really didn't care that they weren't there. Well, the tour started January 17th, 1969, and it ended in December 19th, 1969. And that time, they played some pretty memorable shows, one of which being Woodstock. Now, if anybody knows The Who and Woodstock, they know that Pete has expressed many times over the years that Woodstock was their worst fucking gig. They hated playing Woodstock. Roger Daltrey said the same thing. Fuck Woodstock, it was worst gig ever. We sucked, and so forth and so forth. Now, they say this, and it's kind of hard for me to definitely not agree, because I see it and I think, are you fucking crazy? Like, are you guys like, were you guys that far off on the acid? Because they did get duped with acid. That was another reason why they hated playing Woodstock, was because everything there as a glass or anything in a drink format was laced with LSD. So, like, oh, I'm so thirsty, here's you something to drink, and then you're going out there and you're like, what the fuck? Well, what's going on here, So maybe they thought that their performance lacked because of the LSD, but I didn't think so. I mean, to the few songs that have been released over the years from the Woodstock performance, I don't see anything but awesomeness. I don't see anything wrong. I see it as probably one of the greatest performances of all time, especially for the band at that particular moment in their career, as a live band, as a band that, where they come from, where they're going, the pathway was wide open. But there were a few fuck ups that happened during the show, such as Abby Hoffman decides to get up on stage and express his feelings about the whole concert, and how John Sinclair, who was a member of the White Panther Party, was in jail for or having like a joint on him or something like that, and he got like 20 years or some shit like that. And where I go back to saying The Who is one of the greatest punk bands. Pete Townsend could give 2 fucks about your, John Sinclair, about your fucking hippie movement, but you're on his fucking stage. And there's actual audio of Abby going, like, oh, fuck this, and like, you guys are a pile of shit. You're not talking about The Who, but just saying, like, in general, like, this whole thing, the Woodstock thing, it's a pile of shit, all John Sinclair's in there, and then you hear Pete go, Get off my fucking stage. And he walks over, and apparently he takes his guitar and bashes the fucker in the head. And the guy falls down into the pit. And then, it's kind of like, okay, fine, whatever. He lets that shit go. A little bit later, there's actually footage of this. Some guy walks on stage during the show to, I guess, look at the speaker. And Pete literally stops the show. He, freaks out. He's like, the next fucker who comes on this stage is gonna get fucking killed. Because you don't fucking come on the stage, dude. I mean, we're out here. This is our place. This is sacred ground. You don't fuck with us, kind of deal. That was his mentality of it. And then you hear somebody out in the crowd go, yeah, dig it. And Pete goes, yeah, I can fucking dig it. Kind of deal, like, yeah, fuck you. So, and what I was saying about, like, the really good footage of Woodstock, there's a really good performance or a really good shot of Sparks. And there's a moment where Pete's, like, holding this note on his guitar, and it looks like he's flipping the bird. And I've always thought that was him telling these fucks, like, the Woodstock people, the cameraman, and all these other people, like, this is, like, my only way I could tell you to fuck off. I'm holding this note and this middle finger at a certain way, and it's more or less telling you to fuck you. So, they played Woodstock, and they went on at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. They were supposed to go on at, I think, like 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And it just was complete shit. And they started getting really antsy at the end of the show. They weren't getting paid. It was like, no, we're not doing that. And they had to literally, like, threaten these people, like, to give them a check or they're going to kick their ass. And Roger had went on to say something about, like, you hear talk about Woodstock. He's like, you hear that? That's your American dream, listening to the fucking people out there and in the mud and thinking all this. And then he's like, fuck your American dream. Just give me my money to let me go back home. Like, this ain't for me kind of deal. But, I mean, Woodstock was what it was. Neil Young had a problem with Woodstock. He played at Woodstock, but he told the guy, hey, don't put that camera in my face or I'm going to kick your ass. But like I said before, as a live set, it would be more or less like a 2.5 hour, like 2 hours and 30 minutes worth of performance. And at that time, in 69, that's marathon. Bruce Springsteen wasn't around. Bruce is known for playing like 4 or 5 hour long shows. Metallica, they were known for playing 3.5 hour long shows back in the day. And the Who were the originators of that. That there was no, like, hey, we're gonna step off and take a break. Nah, they were just go right through it, just play it live. No stop, no starts. If you fuck up, just keep on keeping on. And it was a marathon. It really was. And I believe I mentioned it before, especially about Live at Leeds, that Live at Leeds, we both agree, greatest live album of all time.
By far.
Greatest fucking live album of all time.
Incomparable energy for its time.
Exactly. It's controlled chaos. And the Mad Monk, who I used to live with, he actually, I don't think he coined the phrase, but we were watching the London Coliseum show, and they were playing Young Man Blues. And I remember he looked at me and he's like, controlled chaos. Something like that. I was like, that's exactly what the Who are. It's controlled fucking chaos. It was it was one of the greatest, examples of a band where they've come, where they're at, and where they're going. When you listen to a song like, like the version of My Generation stands out, whether it's Live at Leeds or Live at the Hull or Live at Isle of Wight, it's always kind of like resolved around the riff that would later on go to become Naked Eye. There was like this really interesting like medley they would do, where they would do Sparks, and they would do like, you know, See Me, Feel Me, Touch Me, Heal Me, and then they would do this little piece. And I'm not exactly sure what it was called. I know it was called something, you know, like Uprising or Ascending or of some sorts like that, where it was just like this really just beautiful piece of like guitar work that Pete was doing. And you know, and when you listen to Live at Leeds, Pete is very much the inventor, so to speak, of playing off the wall. So, you know, like you hear him playing a guitar riff or like hitting a string, and you can hear it echo all the way up to the top of the building. You know, he was known for doing that. Now, when the whole idea of Tommy came around for them to go and like, hey, we're going to play this, you know, it's an opera, you know. Well, we go play in opera houses. Well, let's go play in these coliseums. Let's play where the orchestra, you know, the symphony plays. Yeah, that's a great idea. Some people didn't think so. You know, some people really had a real hard time grasping you're a rock band, and you know they see us, and I mean us, the fans. You know, they see that we can be definitely, let's say, grimy motherfuckers, but we're definitely, you know, not pristine. Like let's go to the opera in our suits and ties and shit like that. That's not us. You know, that's not who the Who are. But they were the first band to ever really play those type of places, like the amphitheater, you know, opera house. You know, and it goes back to Soundgarden. I mean, like Soundgarden, he was like Kim Thayil said, like, I would rather play in something like that than play an open field. You know, there's something amazing about a sound in a small area such as that, and the fact that, you know, people would be sitting down where the orchestral pit would be, and then you had like those balconies with the you know, like the lights for the opera or whatever, and people are sitting in there and, you know, going forth and just thinking like, these people are rock fans, but we're in an opera. You know, it's really hard to grasp.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, they really did treat it as an opera. They did. I mean, it true was a rock show. You know, it's one of the greatest rock shows, but they treat it as an opera in itself. You know, they had a big deal in New York when they wanted to play at the Metropolitan Opera House. Like there were people in New York who were protesting this. They're like, "There's no fucking way you were going to put this band in this place." No, you know, they're like looking at it, and it's like so old looking, especially in like 69, 70. That, you know, definitely this place has been here since like, you know, fucking 20s or 30s or whatever. I don't know how old that fucking place was, but it was definitely ancient. You know, and thinking like, the Who's gonna come in here and they're gonna play Tommy, and you know the Who, you know Distortion, you know that shit's gonna get loud, and just to see them in that time was something else. You know, they were another one who, the first tour, you know, was like for the first year, and then the album would get re-released, and then they would make more fucking millions would start being released. Then they would go back on tour, and they would tour like another mini tour of Tommy. You know, they'd be like, oh, we didn't play these places. You know, kind of like how like Tool does. Like, you know, if they played a big, you know, like a big, you know, tour, like, all right, we're gonna go back and maybe hit like 10 shows that we didn't, of these places we didn't play before. You know, so to speak. And that's the way it was. And then they would come back off tour, and then the album be selling and selling and selling. And they would have to go, you know, they were into high demand. You know, Isle of Wight, they played, I don't know, man, they played a lot of places. Eventually, they put it to rest, but still, it was one of those things, and the album was still selling. It was still selling after years and years later. I mean, it was still selling, like, kind of like Dark Side of the Moon, it was still selling like fucking 1 million copies a year. something like that. Something astronomical that's along those lines. So after we get done with the whole live experience, and the band eventually goes off and kind of tries to shed the skin of Tommy and the success they've had, like I had mentioned before, there was that one time when Ed Whistle said that, like, people actually thought our band was called Tommy. They didn't know we were called The Who. They forgot about the Who name that was sitting right next to the Tommy thing. Like, who's that? Oh, I don't know. But then a few years later, they would make, well, not they, but eventually Hollywood would be coming, and they adapted the Tommy into a film. Of course, Roger Daltrey, who more or less became one of the greatest frontmen after portraying Tommy on stage. Like, he actually went to Townsend and said, "Can I be Tommy? Well, I want to be Tommy." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And when you listen to the music of that time, the live era, you see some of the stuff like from Woodstock or Isle of Wight, or even from the London Coliseum gig. It's very religious. He is Tommy. You feel it. He comes at you like that. So when the movie comes around, why not? They cast him as Tommy. And Anne Margaret plays his mother. There's actually a couple cameos. Pete Townsend, of course, is in it. Mooney's in it. Ed Whistle's in the movie. I think Jack Nicholson's also in the movie. Eric Clapton's in the movie. There's too many people to name who's in the movie. I watched it one time. That was all I could stand. I didn't care for it. I would rather listen to the album, so to speak, than to watch the movie. The movie's very, I don't know. It's kind of like watching like 2001: Space Odyssey or Clockwork Orange, something of that nature. And I don't get a good vibe from it. There's never a time in the movie where I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah, I like watching this movie. You just kind of sit there and just, it's a theater piece. It really is. I mean, it's still considered an opera. And the film, I don't think it did so well. It became more of a kind of like a cult classic, so to speak, on VHS, and like eventually when it would go down to VHS and DVDs or whatever. Now, I could be wrong. I mean, but I don't think it was ever a big blockbuster. Like a Purple Rain or like a Wall. I don't even think the Wall was even a big success.
No, I think Purple Rain is the only one out of those that was like. Huge.
I mean, going back to you were seeing the same before about like there is kind of similarities between Tommy and the Wall. Between Pink and Tommy. There's definitely similarities between the two. And rock opera movies, so to speak, were always fucking weird for me. Like, I remember even watching, the first time I ever watched The Wall, all the way through. I wasn't on any drugs or anything. I was completely sober. And when I got done watching the movie, I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? I couldn't comprehend it. It was something that, like, okay, that was interesting, but it's like the first time I tried salvia. Like, I freaked out, but when I got done, I was like, I'm really interested in psychedelics. So, like, first time I listened to it, I'm like, so that's interesting. Okay, I'm gonna go and listen to that some more. But as far as Tommy goes, it just was too indulgent. It was like I said, there was moments where it was like claustrophobia. Like, I really couldn't. I felt creeped out some during some of the scenes, and I'm not saying it's a bad movie. Me personally, I probably will never watch it again. Like, if I happen to see it on, yeah, I might sit and watch it a little bit, but I'm not going to sit through it. It's not one of those movies that I'm going to go out myself and personally buy and say, yeah, I own this movie. I'm not like that. I'm more about the album, the era of the '60s kind of deal versus, the later on phases of Tommy, such as the Broadway show. I think that was actually an interesting idea, and it's a great idea. Pete was a part of that. That ran for a very long time. That was a huge success in the Broadway era. Not era, but the Broadway field and stuff like that. It was huge. And then the Who got back together, I think it was 88, maybe 89. And then they didn't do it all the time. But on certain stops, they actually had guests that would come out and sing sing during the show. One of which was, I think Billy Idol came out during one of the songs. Tina Turner was there. There was some other people there, but it was different in the sense that it was kind of done like how the album was. Like there was a band, there was actually a horn section. Pete just wanted to play acoustic guitar. He didn't want to play an electric guitar. He actually broke his hand, I think, so the acoustic guitar was pretty much the only thing that he, I think, was limited to play. I don't know what's the difference, but I'm not a guitar player. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened or why he just wanted to play the acoustic guitar, not the electric guitar, but that was something that was one of the, I guess, things about the tour. Like, I'm not gonna come out there and play with you guys unless I'm just playing the acoustic guitar. I don't want to play the electric guitar. Then again, he could have been suffering from those years of fucking hearing damage. Motherfuckers, he went and seen ear doctors when he was 30. Pete, huh?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you were saying earlier, they're just insanely loud, even before this album.
Yeah, well, I mean, even in the studio, I think there was a documentary that came out about a year or two ago about Quadrophenia, and they were saying any given time during a studio session, I guess they had the monitor or whatever you would take to check the decimal level or whatever. And they said that any one time the level of volume in the studio was the same as if you were to go to Heathrow Airport and sit in front of a 747. It was that fucking loud in the studio. You would literally walk out of the studio with fucking hearing damage. And I was like, and of course you think about shit like that and you're like, man, that's fucking crazy. But as a band, you don't think about shit like that. You just think about fucking conquering and dominating, man. You just think about your art. You think about the fucking songs. You think about what's going on. You don't think about your fucking hearing. Hearing is fucking, oh yeah, who gives a shit about that? Only thing I'm trying to say is what I'm trying to come across. I think of this whole era, like I said, the glory years. This was the era that when I think of the Who and people ask me, why is the Who? Why are they my favorite band? I always think about this. This is one of my all-time favorite eras, lineups, whatever you want to call it. It is just gold. There is no duds. There's no bullshit. It's just perfect. It's everything about it was just perfect. We kind of had a resurgence a little bit. I remember, God, I shouldn't even fucking mention these guys in the Who's, but when American Idiot came out, when I first heard American Idiot, I said, okay, these guys are trying to deliberately rip off Tommy. That's exactly what I thought. I still say to this day that American Idiot is a rip off of Tommy. Is in the same vein, it's along the same lines. Just maybe St. Jimmy is not a deaf, dumb, and blind boy, but he does kind of embody almost the same thing of a character. He has characteristics of a Tommy, so to speak. But it's I hate when bands deliberately do shit like that. Or we later on would compare Pink Floyd. There's definitely some similarities to a Floyd and a Who, and not necessarily always in writing, but in storytelling wise, so to speak. Even though I think Who are more of a prog band than they are a rock band, I don't think I don't think Floyd ever, from Dark Side until the end of The Wall, I don't think they ever not did a storytelling album. You know, at least the Who, you know, they did Tommy. I mean, I know, you know, Who's Next was supposed to be Lifehouse, which was supposed to be this grand idea of like rock opera's extravagance, you know, kind of like a Jesus Christ Superstar almost. But only person who could figure it out or actually see it was Pete. So they eventually just scrapped that, and Who's Next just became a rock album. You know, there was no storytelling or anything. It was just a rock album. But then they would pick that shit back up when they would do Quadrophenia, which was just almost big and important as Tommy was. But I mean, I like Quadrophenia a little bit more, at least like with the sound quality, because you know it's a couple years, so they've gotten better with their sound. But you know, the band in the studio sounded a lot more louder than 1968. You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's a classic album. It's definitely up there with, you know, the Sgt. Pepper's, or it's up there with, you know, the Pet Sounds. I think it's
Dark
right.
Sides.
Fuck yeah. I mean, even though like I would say Dark Side's, but you know, like I prefer Dark Side, but I mean, it was the godfather of a lot of things. It really was. Just like they were the godfathers of a lot of things. You know, I mean, you know yourself, I could definitely point 5 things that the Who has done, and you, like, yeah, fucking you're right, dude, you know.
One of the big things was the whole story. I
Yeah.
mean, this was the blueprint for the American Idiots or the Walls or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
even though, you know, like you said, American Idiot's more like you know, St. Jimmy and what you call it, Tommy were just way too similar.
Right.
You could pass with something like Pink, you know, it's not like, hey, we're doing this with it now.
Yeah. Well, but in the case of Pink, I don't know. I mean, I don't think he started out as like losing his mind, so to speak. You know, that it really.
It was a downward spiral.
Yeah, and I think, you know, of course, if you want, you know, the thing happened with his wife and him, you know. But then again, he's a rock star, so you know, I don't know. It never really. I don't think it was ever really discussed, like the actual meaning behind the entire film. I think it's pretty much what you take from it is what you take from it. What you see is what you get. But godfathers of rock operas, godfathers of, yet I say Prague. But great. Well, on to the final discussion. Now, I had actually mentioned the 25th anniversary of Core. And I don't think we've ever actually had this discussion, but for me, and I know for you, and for most STP fans, it always comes down to Core and Purple. You know, which album was the better album? Was it the first album? Was it like the more kind of raw feel to it? I mean, Purple did have a little rawness, but it was more of a stripped back, like there was definitely a laid back feel.
Interstate Love Song is a perfect
dude.
example.
So, and I definitely know that we're going to probably say the same album. I think we have in the past what the outcome's going to be, but I mean, you know, you got to think, man. It was like what, 93, and the first song I thought was Plush, but I think it was Sex Type Thing was the first song, because I remember when I first seen it. Like, you know, Scott had the really short, kind of like almost like crew cut kind of hair, you know, and it wasn't until like when he got to Plush that he had grown his hair out and he started growing the goatee, and the grunge Scott Weill of like that Bowie-esque that he always embodied Bowie. I mean, you can look at Scott in the very beginning versus Scott in, say, like Velvet Revolver, or even Scott like by the Tiny Music, the Vacation album. Total fucking change. He totally went like glam rock on that album. But which one actually is the better one? That's the That's the hard to decide.
I don't know, man. It's kind of like you were saying. The first album's a lot more like grungier, in your face. Like the first song I actually got into, believe it or not, was Cracker Man.
Yeah.
And just because I like the riff, so I was like, all right, And then I heard a song like Sex Type Thing, and I'm like, okay, Wicked Garden. I have the album, But when it comes down to it, man, it's this is one where I just am literally lost because there's some of my favorite tracks are on Purple too.
Well, I think I've told the story before, but I was at this place here in Orlando. It's no longer open anymore. I believe it's Chipotle's now, but there was a place called Peaches, and it was a record store, and it'd been here I think since like maybe the 60s or 70s. But I remember I went in there and I was looking for the Crow soundtrack because I really liked that Stone Temple Pilots song, but like I said, my dad at the time, he was very much against that. He thought it was evil and stuff, and even though like the guy's coming back from the dead to avenge his death and his girlfriend's death, he didn't see that. He just seen some fucking weirdo in paint, in face paint. So I remember I was looking at it, and then I think I went to the listening thing, and I was like, oh, that's the song, and I'm like, fuck, and then I looked over, and there was this album that had Cherubs on it. And I said, what the fuck is that? So I went and checked it out, and it was STP, Stone Temple Pilots. And the same song that was on the Crow soundtrack was on this album. So the same song that was on the Crow soundtrack is on this album. All right. I started thinking, I was like, well, this has cherubs, and it kind of, looks like something heavenly. Look, something very not threatening. And, then there's the Crow soundtrack kind of deal, and of course, the cover was what it was. I mean, there's nothing to it, but it had a big old crow on the cover, which gave it away. And I was like, I'm just going to go with the STP. So I bought the cassette, and I literally, from the get-go, from go, I listened to that album, I wore the fucker out. I actually had eventually I wound up buying it on CD, but I wore the tape out. I listened to it all the fucking time. I would, I'm done. All right, I'll just go back to Meat Plow. Oh, Kitchens, and okay. Here's Meat Plow, and it was that was my first introduction into STP. I didn't even know about Core at the time. I didn't even know what the hell that was. I just knew what this was, and I was definitely changed. So for me, it was Purple. But then, of course, when I finally discovered Core, oof, I was fucking gone after that, dude. It's just, something like Dead and Bloated. It's just fucking heavy as balls. Even the last song, Where the River Flows, that is one of my favorite fucking songs of all time. I just love his vocals on it. Where the river flows.
Isn't that song close to 8 minutes long?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And then when they do it live, it's even 9.5 minutes long. Because I've seen it it was probably 94, I think, when they played some show, and he was like, yeah, this is off the new album, and plays it. It's literally 9.5 minutes long. But
I think I agree with you though. I think Purple's superior. Not because it's now they're going a little bit softer. You have to check like I was bringing up Interstate Love Song. Just a little bit softer, but hey, they made it work.
Well, yeah, dude. And they also embraced the psychedelia of the 90s. Look at any of those songs like Vaseline, Interstate Love Song, like you had mentioned before. It was so trippy out. It was so fucking crazy. And then when you go see them live, they, especially around that time, they had these 2 lava lamps. And they would, go up and down, kind of, like how lava lamps would do. So, Silver Gun Superman. Probably the best song on that whole fucking album. And just amazing. Amazing work. And Dean, the guitar player, he definitely comes to the forefront on that album, especially with Pretty Penny. more of the
Meat Plow?
acoustic yeah, Meat Plow. A little bit more with the like Lounge Fly, that little slide guitar that he does, and it's just like, oh my god, that's so fucking so tits.
Yeah.
It's so fucking ballsy and so great, man. But and then of course, you're looking at, I look at the producer, Brendan O'Brien. He was there. He was the one who helped them get that sound, man. Like that really loud, to a certain extent, a little bit of a Beatles type of thing. That there was definitely a Beatle vibe to a Stone Temple Pilots album.
Oh yeah.
There was definitely like a Zeppelin feel with, of course, and like you don't think, even like when I look at Stone Temple Pilots, like I never think of Velvet Revolver. I mean, unless you get like down to like the later stuff of STP where Scott's more flamboyant. But during this era, he really wasn't that. He was flamboyant to a certain extent, but he was a lot more kind of laid back, like wearing the long sweaters and dyeing his hair and having big fucking burly beards. And I mean, he just embodied rock and roll, especially in between 93 and 97, man. I mean, they were there just as much as Pearl Jam was, or I'm going to say Radiohead, but like Rage Against the Machine.
Or Soundgarden.
Exactly.
At the time, yeah.
They were on the same level, especially like when their albums were released. I mean, I don't think from Core until probably in 4 were their albums not in the top 10.
Even Tiny Music, that.
Of course, man.
Yeah.
That was definitely
It was a more like poppy, like it's almost like an alt rock pop album,
right?
In a way, because the songs are like more like uppity and kind of sound fun.
Yeah,
But that was really cool for them to go from an album that's I would say Purple's their most diverse work.
Yeah.
And go into an album like that where it's more like almost like indie punk-ish.
I would say Purple is their Zeppelin 2.
Yep.
It was great. It sold great. The look was great, but it's still they still weren't like like that big. They were still kind of, I wouldn't say underground, but they weren't playing like the huge arenas, and that was okay, But I mean, I guess, I don't know, maybe they were playing huge arenas at that time. Maybe that album, I mean, you're not on the cover of Rolling Stone for fucking nothing. You don't, your albums aren't all over MTV for nothing either, so you're obviously selling, pretty big places by that time. And the songs were definitely a little more darker on Purple, I think, than Core. I mean, we Core was more of a raw power kind of thing for STP. There was some melody there. There were Half the Man I Used to Be, stuff like that was definitely the acoustic side, like the Zeppelin 3 era or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Where they were like, hey, let's do something.
Just wind it down a little bit, yeah.
Right, And what's your thoughts?
I would agree with you. Lyrically, thematically, and just, the soundscape, I think Purple's not just better because I favor it more, but because it's just darker in general. Mm-hmm. Over Core, which, I mean, it has its dark moments, but it's more, like you said, it's more just energetic, very, like, classic grungy type of sound, and they would just go on to experiment a little, and that's good. That's good. I mean, it proves that they wanted to grow. So
yeah. Well, I mean, and like I said before, looking back over the career of Scott Weiland, and especially when you come to this era, you could definitely tell the grunge era versus like Tiny Music era. He had the beard when he was making that, but by the time when they would go out to tour with it, he shaved it all off. He got clean cut. He changed his appearance yet again, and those shows were kind of like when he had like the long sleeve black shirt, and he had his hair, kind of like Elvis-y. He reminded me of like Elvis with the hairdo of that era. But, he was one of those ones we've talked about before that, he could change with the times. He changed. How many appearances that guy over the past 25 years, or the past 20 years?
More than I can count on my fingers, dude.
Yeah. I mean, he changes with every record.
Rest in peace, dude.
Yeah, man. But anyway, I'm going to say purple.
I say purple.
Purple, too. Well, we've actually come up to the to that dusty trail that I really hate going down, but, we have to go down it. So until we meet again, I am the Great Boudini.
I'm Sir Lancelot.
And in the immortal words of Eddie Vedder, we'll see you on the flip side.
Ka-chow.
Okay, so, like a lot of kids, one of your first jobs is probably like McDonald's, something of that nature, fast food.
Preach it to the choir.
Exactly. The mooch, he worked at McDonald's. His brother worked at McDonald's, and maybe his, brother's brother, whatever.
My mom did at one point.
Exactly, okay. So, everybody's worked at McDonald's.
Who's your daddy and what does he do?
So,
McDonald's.
I started working at McDonald's when I think I was a junior in high school. And at the time, there was this thing called a bin. And a bin would be something that, one slot, there would be cheeseburgers, hamburgers, doubles, and then, like the exotic stuff like the quarter pounders and the Big Macs, So I wouldn't work in there at all, And I remember it was like my first day, so this guy that I was working with, we're sitting there talking, and I think his name was Joe. And I'm sitting there just like, hey man, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened here? And he said, well, I don't know about the craziest thing, but the craziest thing that I've ever done here, he proceeds to tell me that one night he was working. And it was kind of like the end of the night, probably like last 10, 15 minutes before everything got closed down. Because at one particular time, McDonald's, closed at a certain time. It wasn't 24 hours like it is nowadays. So he's telling me, he's like, there's, I think, 6 hamburgers in the bin. And he's like, fuck, man, I don't want to, we're going to have to get rid of that shit. So he's like, I got an idea, like a prank, kind of deal. He's like, So he proceeds to take the 6 hamburgers, take them to the bathroom, and wank off on them.
What the fuck?
On all 6 of them.
What the fuck?
All 6 of them, and wrapped them back up, put them back in the bin. And what he was thinking was, oh fuck, dude, nobody's gonna come by the last, 4 or 5 minutes of nobody's gonna do it. Sure enough, some motherfucker comes through and orders 6 fucking hamburgers. No. Took them all the way. And I was like, what the fuck? I said, what happened? He goes, don't know. He never came back. I was like, oh shit, dude, no. And he's like, yeah. I was like, no. I said, don't tell me that shit. Because that's what, ever since then, I don't give a fuck. I always peel back. fucking bun just to make sure no shit's in my stuff, man.
That makes me want to do that.
Yeah, fuck yeah. He told me that. I was like, really, dude? And he's like, dude, it was 5 minutes. Nobody is going to come by and order 6 fucking hamburgers. He's like, so they fucking came by and ordered 6 fucking hamburgers. And I was like, you are a grimy motherfucker.
You know, the funny
Seriously.
thing is that there was actually I saw some story one time that sounds similar to what you said. Apparently, it was some black chick, whatever. She I guess she posted something saying like, she's loves to suck dick or whatever, her boyfriend's dick, and she
Right.
likes to swallow the cum. And I guess apparently one day she went to McDonald's, she ordered some McChickens. And apparently, when she ate it, she felt like the familiar
Right.
taste
Oh,
of it.
shit, really?
And come to find out, like I guess maybe a
Come
few
to
days
find
later.
out?
Come to find out.
Ha. But yeah, later on, she finds out that she got herpes from after eating it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Dude. Fucking cum.
No.
Herpes.
Because like her fucking mouth, like I guess like the next day or two later, that's when all the fucking bumps are showing up in her mouth.
I also saw this video, right? It's just this chick that pulls up, like, at some random time in the night, orders some, like, chicken McNuggets, right? And the lady behind the counter is like, no, I'm sorry, we're sold out of that. Is there anything else? She's like, no, I need my chicken McNuggets. Where are my chicken McNuggets? She's like, I'm sorry, you come back in the morning, we'll probably have some then. She fucking gets out of the car and jumps through the cashier window and just starts attacking this lady. Like, she breaks through the glass because she's like slamming.
I posted
the
that
window.
shit the other day on my Facebook, dude, because, like, she was like, yo, why aren't you selling chicken McNuggets at this time of night? He's like, because we don't sell them. And he's like, bitch! And she goes through and she starts to hit the girl, and then the girl's, like, pulling on her fucking hair, dude.
That's the one, yeah.
And then you hear the guy say, he's like, close that fucking window, man, the crazy bitch. She comes in and starts bashing the fucking window. I posted, I said, somebody get that bitch a chicken McNuggets now. But in that case, Q, I told you.